Talking to our kids about sex is really important. If we do it poorly, we can lead to them having a life of bad sex. And if we do it well, we can support them to really be empowered in their sexuality and to make sure that they take care of themselves in really good ways throughout their life. The problem is that society teaches us to be private about our sexuality. We all hide the fact that we're very sexual beings, except when we're in magazine aisles at the grocery store reading about it. But if we have that kind of privacy, what is that? What is privacy? If you look closely, it's shame. There's a certain sense of shame that we have in our society about being sexual beings. And unfortunately, that shame gets in the way of being able to have very good conversations with our kids. We end up feeling really awkward. We end up saying things in really weird ways and giving our kids very strange conceptions about sex and that they should feel ashamed about it. They can read the feelings that we have and come to associate it with a lot of awkwardness. If we can work through our own shame, then we can come to interact with our kids in a very easeful way and support them to have a sexual relationship with themselves that is very empowered. So I want to give you 5 things that you can do to have a really good conversation with your kids and support their sexual development. The first one is you need to get in touch with your own shame. Perhaps you even notice it listening to me. You cringe in certain moments and you back away at the idea of being direct. Notice what happens for you when you think about talking to your kids about sex. And see if you can go ahead and write down what those issues are so you can think about them. Quite likely they got passed to you from your parents and their shame about sexuality, their difficulty talking to you, combined with obviously all the mixed messages we get from our society about our sexuality. Once you've taken a little bit of time to feel your own shame and your own feelings about your sexuality, go to your partner and share with them. Find out about what's going on for them. That teamwork will allow both of you to work through your shame and to come to feel better about your sexuality and your ability to talk about it. If you've never really talked to anybody about the feelings you have about sex, then going and talking to your kids about sex is probably going to fail. Start by really sharing all things that come up with you with your partner and talk with your partner about how you would like to talk to your kids about it. Make it a collaborative effort that will allow both of you to feel a lot more empowered in that moment. The third issue is when to tell your kids, and I'll say throughout their life and as early as possible. We start obviously with the birds and the bees and how animals do it, and then where babies come from and where they come from. It slowly develops as they develop. And this also gives us a chance to develop our ability to talk about it in a non-shameful way. If you've never really talked to your kids about making love, and you have to do that at the age of 10, 11, or 12, then it's going to be really awkward for you, and you're likely to pass on all kinds of shame. But if you slowly feed it to them, you'll get a chance also to warm to the subject and find your way that will feel really empowering and good for both of you. The fourth thing is while you're doing this, you should really track your child's reactions. Of course, they're gonna be uncomfortable. That's kind of inherent in the process, and you're often feeding them information that's a little bit ahead of them. You don't wanna be behind them if they're figuring it out from their friends or from their own internal explorations. There's a lot of chances for it to get messed up. So if you're just a little ahead of them, they're gonna be uncomfortable, but they're gonna have the information there so that when they start feeling their own sexuality in their own body, they're gonna know what to do with that, and they're not gonna feel all ashamed and awkward. But still track their reactions. If they're getting overstimulated by what you're saying and really shutting down, then obviously back off and take it slower. It varies a lot for different kids at what age you should do this, as they all develop at different ages, and it's often different for boys and girls. But if you can find your ability to meet them and track their reactions to where they're at, then you'll be able to dole out the information in a way that feels very natural and supportive. The fifth thing is likely to trigger your shame. And that's that I really recommend talking to your kids about the fact that you have sex. Let it be a normal part of life, not some weird thing that we hide from one another. Let the kids know when appropriate, oh yeah, we had sex last weekend. Not a big deal, not putting it in their face. And I highly recommend not having sex in a way that the kids have to listen to, because that's actually really disturbing for them. They don't know what those sounds mean and therefore can't relate to them. But for telling them about having sex, or that you do have sex, or that happens occasionally, then they come to know that, oh, sex is something people do. Then they don't have to feel ashamed about it in themselves, and they can come to the reality that we all live in a world where sexuality is a big part of it. There's one really important thing that I need to talk to you about in this subject, and this might be shocking, but please stay with me. It is very normal for kids to have sexual feelings towards their parents. They're very intimate with us, and as their bodies change and they start to feel good in their body, it's normal for them to feel arousal and connection with us. If we react poorly to this and we flinch back, then we give them a message that their sexuality is bad and that they should keep it in check. If, on the other hand, we still hold our boundary, but we stay in connection with them in that moment, then they learn that sexuality is okay. To be clear, I am not condoning any form of sexual contact with our kids, but often it's just a question of them cuddling, and maybe you can feel in that cuddling a certain eroticism that hasn't been there before. If you back away in that moment, you can create bad effects. Notice anything that's happening for you and see if you can stay in contact with your kid. Similarly, it is very normal for us as parents to have sexual thoughts about our children. Yes, that is a disturbing idea, but the reality is we're very close with them. We love them and often in physical contact. As their sexualities bud, their hormones are going to affect ours. If we react to those brief moments of sexual arousal in a negative way, we can actually cause lots of little traumas for our kids. If, on the other hand, we can feel those experiences and, of course, not act on them, but nonetheless stay in contact with our child, they'll move along and our child gets a good message about their ability to stay in contact with us. This is seen really starkly between fathers and daughters, especially if they were really close. But then as the daughter's body starts to change and they become a sexual being, the fathers often abandon them in that moment. They often feel like they should stop roughhousing and wrestling and being close and being in contact. And perhaps this is because also they might have sexual images that come to mind, which is totally normal. If they back away and abandon their daughter, they teach their daughter that they are not safe with the man and that they need to be worried about a man's abandonment throughout their life. It's really important for dads to notice how they respond as their daughters develop into sexual beings and to stay in contact in a way that the daughters really need from us. Thank you for joining me. I would love to hear your thoughts about talking to your kids about sex. Please join the conversation below, and I'll see you next time for another episode. Take care.